welcome to the show. I'm Brian Smith, and I'm thrilled to be joined by my fellow co-host and co-pilot, Lisa Mason. Today, we bridge the gap with Bryan Ward, who describes himself as a human just like you, and along the way became a police officer in New Zealand, a husband, a dad, a rugby coach, and a heavy metal-loving hockey fan. Welcome, Bryan.
Thanks, team. Nice to see you all again. And as I refer to most of my Canuck friends, I call you yesterday's people because you're in yesterday and I'm in the future.
Yeah, that was the fun thing about trying to coordinate this. You have been my most extreme time zone difference. When I was in school, I had to deal with a couple of people out in Ottawa and stuff like that, so dealing with that. But yours, to make sure this happened perfectly, it was, okay, let's make sure this math works out. We're not going the wrong day here.
Yeah, everybody, when anybody tries to book an appointment with me from Canada, they always say it's like talking to Marty McFly and Doc Brown. You've got to get the kick just right so the lightning strikes at the right time.
Exactly.
Well, brother, I really appreciate you doing this. I know this is going to be a fantastic conversation. So
appreciate it.
Bryan, what a great introduction. But one of the things that you missed in that introduction, and one of the things that Bryan did not describe him as, is an all okay ambassador. And I believe the only out of nation all okay ambassador. And that's actually how Bryan and I met. So what a great organization that Fadi and Matt have put together there. And it's really brought some cool people into my life. And Constable Bryan Ward is certainly one of them.
It is. And when you look at kind of the resume that Bryan had, when he sent me everything and it's like, ambassador, done this, done that, been a part of this initiative, it's really incredible. And he gave me that shorter, condensed one. He said, I don't want to be pretentious with this stuff. I'm just like everyone else. And I'm like, that is the best. Yes, we're going to do with that awesome short little intro that he gave me, because it just goes to show how awesome a person is, where they can do so much and yet be humble to be like, look, just put these things out, right? Like, I love that about these kind of people.
Oh, look, it's like I say to people, you know, if you're, as we'd say here, a mum or a mom, as you guys would say, with 3 kids, you're a solo mum or something, and you're doing some hard yards, you're more special than I am, because to do that, you should get some type of medal for that. I think we just overlook people and some of the amazing human beings that are out there. We just sort of go there, sort of everyday people. They're not, they're everyday heroes. They're doing stuff and they're doing their very best, and you can't knock that.
Yeah, totally. One of the things that I'd like to chat with you about, Bryan, is you are a Winston Churchill Fellow. And as part of that, you actually came to Canada to work through that fellowship before you became a fellow. And so tell us a little bit about that. What was it that you were trying to accomplish through that fellowship? And what do you think is the biggest lesson that you really took away from your time here in Canada?
So I guess I should first start off by saying Danit Ada to all of my friends at the Satuna Nation in Alberta. So long story short, I got a police fellowship about 2 years before I got the Winston Churchill Fellowship, and I came up to Canada. And literally the week before I came up to Canada, my wife said to me, hey, I've been watching on YouTube and there's this amazing police officer up there. I think you and him would get on. And I'm like, oh, I've already got my fellowship sorted. I got my dates. I'm going to go and see a good friend, Laurie McCann. I'm going to do this, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I think you need to watch the video. So I watched the video and I'm like, dang it, she's right. This guy is awesome. His name's Chief Keith Blake from the Satuna Police Service. So I rang him up. Well, I didn't ring him up. I got hold of him on LinkedIn and I sort of said, hey, is there any chance of me coming to spend an hour or two with you just to have a look? And he said, yeah. So I went and spent some time with him and it was amazing. It was probably the best policing I've ever seen, community policing I've ever seen, hands down. And as we finished, our hour turned into like 4, and I walked down the stairs. I remember turning around to Chief Blake and saying, I don't know how, I don't know why, but I'm coming back to see you because this is amazing. I said, just let me figure it out. So the entire plane trip back from Canada, I was scribbling away on pieces of paper how I could make it happen, how I could come back and see them. And then when I got back, somebody said to me, have you ever thought about applying for a Winston Churchill Fellowship? And I was like, no. And then they said, but, and I went, yeah. I said, most of the time they give it to fairly good academics, but I've since found out they give it to a whole range of people. Weirdly enough, one of my police college instructors got a Winston Churchill Fellowship. So him and I are the same. But so I was like, oh, okay. And he said, so good luck with that, you crayon leader. I was like, oh, I've got nothing to lose. So I put it in and I got the fellowship, and then it was amazing. I spent like 3.5 weeks with the Satuna Nation and the Satuna Nation people. Just an amazing place. And just what they're trying to do for their people is just incredible. It's like I said to the chief, if I could bottle this and bring it back and spread it all around policing around the world, I think it would be such an amazing thing.
So what do you think was one of the biggest things that stuck with you about the way that they community police? Was there one thing, or is it more of a culture in terms of like the way that their approach is and things like that?
The humanity and the innovation. They will try, if they think that it's going to work, they'll try something. They're not like, oh, it's too big a ship to turn, or we're a really big organization, we can't do this. Inspector Blake, who is Keith's wife, she's up there, and she was telling me this great thing about how they had an evening where they were, I think it was, they were doing some beating, and they were organising a beating night, and only one person turned up. And everybody sort of sat there. The 3 cops that were there were like, oh, well, this is a waste of time and everything else. But one person turned up. That same person then went on about sort of 6 to 8 weeks later to basically disclose a huge amount of sexual abuse that had occurred to her. And everybody sort of went, you know what, it's never, ever not worth it. And that's just their mentality. They will try everything. They do cookouts for Stampede, which I missed. I'm so upset. But they go to powwows and all that type of stuff, just incredible, So, yeah, just an amazing, amazing place, amazing people, and just an incredible police service.
It's so interesting to talk about, like, one person is not a waste, because I mean, how often do we see this, Bryan, in our suicide prevention and awareness opportunities? But you must see it every day in the job that you do, and how something that was meant to be so much bigger or so different in its approach impacts that one person. And you talked about this on your Stand Up Again podcast. I think that ripple effect of impacting one person and what that really does to the world and what it brings out. Are there any situations that sort of come to mind to you where that sort of happened in your life?
Oh, there's lots. I guess my mantra for policing is don't ever forget that somebody is somebody's son or daughter. And you would want your son or daughter, how would you want your son or daughter to be treated by that police officer? Even if they're having their worst day, you'd still like that police officer to be kind, compassionate, and caring, and talking to them as if they're a human being. I know that I've had some crazy incidences, where, like, even if I had been Mother Teresa, it probably still wouldn't have come out the way it would have come out. But I'm always trying to deliver my best, and I think that's something that we forget sometimes. And like I said before, there is that ripple effect. I remember I once was on what we call here prison escort. So I was escorting the prisoners. Like you guys have your sheriffs, I think. So doing some sheriff's duty. We don't have separate departments. We only have one police department in New Zealand. And I saw a gentleman, and then I came past his cell door a little bit later, and I thought, well, that's strange. Where is he? And he'd actually developed a ligature. And they managed to cut the ligature down and get down. And the next time I saw him was about 6, 8 weeks when he'd come back through custody. And he was in a happier space. He was a lot better. And he thanked me for saving his life, and the fact that his 3 children would now have a father and everything else. Now, I've since lost contact with him, but who knows what those 3 children have gone on to do? Who knows what he's gone on to do? And that's, I think, one of the things that we kind of lose is that ripple effect. When people are taken out, there is no more ripple effect. There's no bringing them back, sadly. So, yeah, it's just one of those things, I guess.
And have you found that from when you started almost 3 decades ago to now, How has your department been with being able to help people with that, event when you first started, and maybe it was a traffic accident or whatever, and how the department acted and stuff like that with support for its officers? And how do you see that change now with how support is given to officers who might have to deal with a very traumatic event?
Yeah, so when I started, and I always say this to the recruits and the rookies whenever I get the chance to chat them, older than Google, because Google came out in 1996. So, yes. Anyway, I think the big thing for us is we've gotten a lot better. The New Zealand Police is amazing at trying to support its people as best as we can. Just like any other government organisation, we have limited resources, we have limited staff. I come from the tail end of what we used to call a pie and a pint era, which was when you were basically given a meat pie and a pint of beer, and at the end of your shift, you'd sort of talk to your senior or your sergeant, iron it out, and if it wasn't gone within sort of an hour, we'll talk to the psychologist later on, and that was it. Whereas now we have people, sort of 6, 7, 8 months after the event has happened, they might come in and see their supervisor or come and see another fellow officer and say, hey, I'm not good. Here's what's happening. And when I had my own little wobbles with PTSD, it was reassuring to know that I could talk to people and they weren't all going to think that, well, this guy's eggs are scrambled, he's done. Let's throw that veteran out on the scrap heap and we'll grab a new number. So it was really, really good. And I think as an organisation worldwide, I think the police are a lot better at actually recognising PTSD and everything else. And if we're honest, 30 years ago, if you had PTSD, that was a career ender, because people would just look at you and go, this guy's like Martin Riggs. And it's like, yeah, maybe not.
Yeah. You put a post out recently that says, PTSD shouldn't be inevitable for those who serve their community and their country. And I'm paraphrasing, obviously.
Yeah.
What do you think is missing? And it's a bit of a loaded question, Bryan, so I get that. But what do you think is missing, either in early childhood development or, through the academies or, whatever level it is, that is causing PTSD to be so prevalent? Or is it just that human nature has gotten to such a dark place with divisiveness and other things that, you're seeing more and you're witnessing more and faster into your careers?
I think for me, that's the thing. You're seeing things a lot faster than you used to. And I read a book years ago by a scientist who basically said, once communication becomes worldwide and instant, all censorship will go. And I think that's kind of what's happened. And censorship has gone. I mean, even though many of us have had grandfathers who served in the Second World War, for instance, we never ever saw what they saw. But whereas now, battlefields of Afghanistan, footage from the Ukraine, that type of stuff, we're actually seeing that an hour or two after it happens, and we sort of go, oh, jeepers. We've got video games that are uber realistic. But I think until people actually see the emotional cost behind it, then they actually start to realise, oh my goodness. In New Zealand, we have a big mental health campaign that says it's okay not to be okay. And that's something that a lot of our children from what we'd call childcare centres are told, if you need some help, asking for help is one of the bravest things you can do. And one of my favourite things to do is to sit in a room full of macho cops and ask them who their favourite action hero is. And, you get the typical Rambos, John Wick, John McClane, Martin Riggs, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Do you know where the pivot point in all of their stories was? It was when they were at their most vulnerable, before they went full sort of guns a-blazing mode. Every single one of them, Rocky, you just keep going. There's all a stage where they are absolutely broken and they have to show their resilience and stand up and pick themselves up and keep going. And I think that's something that we tend to forget. We see people like John Wick and just go, amazing, from woe to go. You can't live your life like that. It just doesn't happen. You need other people around you. You need other people's help and support.
Yeah, what a great parallel. I mean, even in Deadpool,
Yeah.
parts that sort of was, and
Yeah.
funny movies. I watched them with my nephews. They were definitely too young to watch them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I didn't know what I was getting into, and they talked me into
That's all
it.
good.
By that point, we were in. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. We're in deep. It's too late. Yeah.
yeah, but same thing, right? He has that loss and that tragedy, and then that sort of spurs him into his heroism or
Yeah.
whatever, right? So, and I think that we see that a lot in. I mean, look, that's where some of these foundations come from. Canadian Cancer Society, things like that. Somebody who's experienced a loss. Terry Fox, right? I know you like to use
Greatest of all time. Don't care what
right.
anybody says. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there was this brokenness and this devastation, and then there was this moment of, well, there's something that I can do to try to fix it, maybe not for myself, but for somebody else. And I think that, we see that so often, but we never actually put that pattern together emotionally to understand that you have to come from that place to be that hero.
Yeah, and I think that's like you say. I think that's something that lots of people just don't realise. Uh, I'm going to say I was lucky because you know the story. But I had tragedy before I kind of started in the police. I had a real bad heartbreak, relationship breakup, and that kind of led me to be more softer and compassionate. I mean, that's it. I'm happy to rumble. If you want to rumble, I'll go. We're all good. But, there's smarter and more intelligent ways around it. And I think also when you're talking to people and they actually realize, actually, you know what, this person actually really does give a damn about me, then things pivot because they can see, all right, I might actually be able to get some help. I might be able to do something here as opposed to, yeah, hurry up, buddy. I got a form to go to and then I got another 3 jobs to get there. Let's get this sorted.
Yeah.
Bryan, do you think that because of your martial arts training and stuff like that you have a physical confidence with yourself that you can go into those situations and offer a little bit of that softer hand because you can defend yourself where you don't have to go in there almost kind of guns a-blazing, that you can negotiate more because if it does go a little sour, you have that confidence that you can defend yourself a little bit better than if you didn't have that background and you tried to go into a situation that might be tense?
Yeah, I think so. And it's purely due to that fact of as I go into situations and conflicts, I'll always think to myself, if I can't talk this person down, then I have failed. I should be able to talk to almost anybody and bring them down a bit. And if I can't, and we've got to go hands on hands, or maybe we've got to taser somebody or something else like that. Then, I mean, I'm not saying that every police officer does that as a failure because I'm not, different time, places, and circumstances. But me personally, I'm trying my very utmost, like I said before, to try and treat that person like somebody's daughter or son. And if you said to me, oh, hey, would you rather have a police officer talk to your son about his issues or things get out of hand and then eventually they end up tasering them? I'm like, if they were going to hurt the police officer and the police officer had to do that to defend themselves, I'm all good. Yeah, so that's the kind of, I'm trying to treat people the way that I'd like my son to be treated, I guess. But yes, in answer to your question, yes, probably, Bryan. Yeah, I'm not afraid to get into the trenches, but the older I get, the longer it takes to recover as well, if I'm honest. Yeah.
Exactly. And something too with how Lisa was bringing up kind of with the burnout and stuff like that, PTSD within service. Do you almost find that for some locations with police officers, it is such a go between either domestics, murders, car accidents, and things like that, that there's so much that you can kind of wall yourself off before it becomes now detrimental to your service as a cop and then as a father, a son, daughter, everything else that comes with it. If you could have your dream world of how cops went into it and maybe how then they would start transitioning before any kind of real retirement time, before being like, oh, I'm a homicide detective and it's retirement day and now I'm a civilian again. How would you change that a bit so that there is kind of a phasing out program for officers to kind of decompress before they get back into the civilian world?
Now, this is a great question, and I've got the answer because I've actually seen one of my colleagues do this. I think he did 35 or 40 years of service. And what he's been doing for the last 5 years of service is he's been knocking 1 day of work off every single sort of year. So it's like a 5-year cycle. So there'll be, I think he's now gone, but by the time he'd left, he was only actually working a day and a half within the department rules. And it was like a slow sort of burnout. So he was still doing stuff with the guys and the girls on the floor, and he was still doing search warrants and everything else. But by the same token, he was doing this complete sort of about face where he was helping his wife do the gardening at home and everything else. So he was slowly easing into his retirement, because I know, and I'm dreading the day, but there's a real big moment, and I'm spoken to lots of ex-veterans that I know and first responders, where they leave their job and they lose their identity because all of a sudden they go from being Constable Bryan to just Bryan, and all of a sudden it's like, what do I do with myself? I've got nothing to do, or people don't understand me because I talk about stuff. So I think the gentleman I'm talking about, he did it the best way possible. And I'm looking to emulate his footsteps if the department will let me do it. And I realise that it might not be possible for all departments, but certainly by taking a little bit of time out towards the end of your career, not those big, as we all seen them, I'm going to take a 6 weeks cruise and then I'll come back. Yeah. And they do the 6-week cruise and then they come back and it's like, right, so this is retirement. What am I doing? Whereas he, just a slow burn. He had interests, he had pastimes, he had hobbies, he'd joined clubs. It was, to be fair, it was probably one of the best endings of a career I've ever seen.
But even if you could go just to part-time, right? Like 2.5, 3 days a week, just to sort of start to edge yourself out a little bit and, have time to find and build those hobbies and, get into volunteer programs or mentorship programs or whatever else that you plan on using for, to take up some of your time and give you that purpose on the other side of your career, in order to, so that when you do finally get out and retire, you at least have something that seems familiar. And I think, that's the biggest thing. And I mean, you and I have talked about this with John, right? John was in the transition program, but he was in the transition program during COVID. So he went from being on base 5 days a week to never being on base and barely talking to anybody. And then we lost him. And so that sudden switch off really it really messes with your mind and your identity. And, I'm kind of going through that a little bit myself right now, which is bizarre. But, I went from working nearly 80 hours a week. And then at the end of November, I quit my job and I started a consulting business. And now I work 8 hours a week and I'm trying to figure out what the heck to do with my life. Because I realized I didn't really have that many hobbies, and now being on the West Coast, I got Bryan pretty close, but and now I can fly to you, Bri.
Exactly.
Much easier. But you look at these things, and when your life shakes up like that in such a big way, it can really play with your mind and the way that you see yourself and value yourself. And it's a challenge to redirect the messaging into something positive and hopeful, I guess. So what do you think is one of the biggest challenges that you're going to face when you look at retirement? I mean, you're a mini celebrity over there. With maybe a big celebrity over there.
No, I'm not a celebrity. We don't have them in New Zealand.
Just like spiders, no celebrities. No spiders.
Exactly. I guess my biggest thing will be not my loss of identity, because I'm intending on doing charity work and everything else. But I think it'll just be like having a purpose and knowing what my strengths and weaknesses are. So I tell people and they kind of look at me sideways and I'm like, I'm like, no, that's probably what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and get a job as a barista, and just be a barista for 3 days a week. I want to be like the Equalizer who works at a hardware store, and everybody says, "What's that guy doing?" They're not too sure. So no, because for me that's I love coffee. I love talking to people. I love giving people things so that they can feel better about themselves. We all know how great a cup of coffee makes us all feel. And I know that there'll be a little bit of pressure there and everything else. Why not? That to me and then I'll probably do sort of something in the other 2-3 days. Depends what my wife and my son have got organised for me. But that's my sort of plan, is just to do some type of medial job. So I've still got some type of purpose. I don't play golf; it's a silly game. But so that type of stuff. And I'll just go and do my things that I want to do. But at the same time, know that, hey, I've got to turn up for not duty, but I've got to turn up for work at a place on XYZ day. Great, I'm all good with that. There's no problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a simple plan, but I'm a simple man. That's the way it works. Yeah.
But I
And
love
that's-
that, right? I mean, that's
and
why
that-
we have Walmart greeters.
Yeah. Yeah.
And simple plans are easy to keep going and stuff like that. You try and make it too complicated, then it gets all like that. And that just sounds amazing. Find people,
Yeah.
talk to them, and keep kind of doing that community spirit that you found within policing. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
that's awesome.
I guess, like we said, Brian, before, you get people who, they do the big cruise thing, or they do the massive overseas holiday. It costs them like $30,000-$40,000. They come back, they sit in their sort of armchair, and then they look at their wife or their partner or whatever, and they go, wow, is this it? That's my life. And it's like, no, it's, yeah. So that's it, yeah. I don't want to be that person. I want to still keep on going. So, yeah, that's me.
Now, what got you into policing? And then from that pathway, how did you get into doing so many of these initiatives and things that you've been recognized for?
I was at Teachers College doing a diploma in assisting people with special needs. And I don't know why, but in that last week, they have a week where you go and spend some time in a different career that maybe you've thought about. And at the time, I had already discussed to my sort of girlfriend, possibly soon to be fiance, about the fact that I was maybe thinking about joining the police, but I wasn't too sure. And I'd just done sort of 2 years doing this diploma, so I thought, I got to day 2 in the back of the car doing a ride along, and I was like, that teaching gig's never ever going to happen. I'm going to join the police. And then, of course, my girlfriend went overseas. She did John me and then ghost me. And then after that, I took that as sort of the spur to get going and join the police. Lost my 28 kgs, got to the run standard that I needed to get, and then boom, just went from there. So it was that was my path to policing, I guess, and I've never ever looked back. Where the initiatives come from, I think sometimes I see stuff from overseas and I think, yeah, that'd be great. Like when we did the All Black jersey run, for instance, where we basically travelled a lot of the North Island of New Zealand just to get an All Black jersey off the All Blacks, who, to give you some idea, are probably held in the same esteem. This is going to sound rude, but I don't mean it to be rude, Canadian listeners, probably in greater esteem than Team Canada. That's how much we love the All Blacks and the Black Ferns here. But it was that thing of, yes, let's do this. But at the same time, in the back of my head, Lise, like you said, I had Terence Stanley Fox, doing this magnificent thing for humanity. And that was nowhere near comparable, but it was the fact that we were doing this thousands upon thousands, running 86 kilometres in a day and that type of stuff, to get an All Black jersey and then being able to turn around to the kids and saying, I've earned an All Black jersey off the All Blacks, and that type of stuff. So it's kind of putting your money where your mouth is. And I guess with a lot of the initiatives, for me, it's that thing of, if I do the initiatives, then how is this going to tie in to preventative policing? And so many of the initiatives that I've done have, like for instance, I'm involved in a literacy program here where I go to talk to school kids about my love of comics. Well, that's what I do when I'm at the assembly, and try to get the kids to read. Because as we know, there's a direct correlation between those people who are incarcerated and being illiterate. So if I can get lots of kids to read, that's a great thing. I've had some people come up to me. I'm a doctor. I'm a nurse. I'm now a warehouse manager. I remember you coming to my school when I was 7. I'm like, that is the gold right there. I'll tell you that. That's better than any medal or any accolade whatsoever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I can remember the police officers who came for Just Say No. Do you remember this, Bryan?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
And the drug prevention
Yeah.
things that we went through here in the 90s. And I still remember those police officers. And I think, I mean, none of them were as cool as to have their own TV shows, but
I got lucky, to be fair. But it's funny you say that, Lisa, but that's probably part of the reason why the TV show came around, because if I said to you at the same time when those officers were coming around, you could probably name all of those officers. But if I said to you, hey, who was the chief of, I'm going to guess it was the Toronto Police Service then, or the Ontario Police Service, whatever it was, who was that? And you won't know. And that's no disrespect to that person who was that leader of that organisation. Sometimes I think some of our officers and some of our grunts think that they're not leaders, but some of the stuff they do, it shapes lives, and I don't think they quite realise their impact sometimes. So, like I said, you'll be able to name those officers. And when we started developing Bryan and Bobby, the whole reason I did that was because there was a police officer here in New Zealand who had been on a kids' TV show and only been on that TV show for about a minute and a half with a puppet dog, strangely enough. But when I went to schools and community groups, and we're talking, what it would be close to now it would be about 40, 45 years ago, people would ask me, what's happened to Constable Keith? And his dog's name was Sniff. What's happened to them? Nobody would say to me, what's happened to Commissioner Doon, or what's happened to Commissioner sort of Smith? And I was like, you know what? That guy has got some type of magic. I need to be on that same wavelength. So yeah, that's where it started. But yeah, and I think, like I said before, I just think that some people, particularly police officers, maybe privates or something else, they might not look at themselves as a leader, but they are.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in with our community event that Operation Talk to Me Johnny does at the end of May, I interact with so many community engagement officers and other people who are sort of in the lower ranks at these events, and just the way that they approach the community and the way that they approach the kids, and what they bring to that event is such a special aspect of it. And they think they're just doing their job, but it's so more than that. And I think it's really incredible what some of these individuals can bring to their communities, having absolutely no idea that that's what they're doing.
Yeah, and like I always say to them, if I'm doing a training day or something with them, you need to realise that in 30 years' time, that little girl who's 7 standing there is still going to be able to remember your name, and whether or not you were having a good day or a bad day, you gave her a smile or a fist bump or something else like that. And
yeah, I mean, look at Lori. Lori's a great example. Lori will tell you she's not a hero a million times over, but that woman is absolutely incredible in everything that she does.
My son refers to her as Canada's Wonder Woman.
And that she is.
yeah. But it's just that thing, so Lisa and I got taught by my police instructor when I was at college, and he was 100% right. If you meet somebody from, I don't know, let's say if you meet somebody from an NHL team and they go out of their way, they sign you an autograph, they have a picture, maybe they give you a cap that they're wearing or something else. And I'm not saying that they can all do that, because they can't. You're going to walk away going, man, that person, that organisation is amazing. I'm a fan for life, and away you go. Even if you don't like them particularly as a team, but you'll be a fan for life. And I think that that's something we forget there, because if that person goes, oh, no autographs today, but I'm not having a good day, you're going to walk away going, what an a-hole. Those guys are stuck up, or girls are stuck up. I'm not interested, type stuff. And I think that that's something that we kind of forget sometimes. So, yeah.
Yeah. So talk to us about your rugby team. And so I know that you're, are you still coaching girls rugby, and how did you get into that, and what made you focus on the ladies?
Let me think. I think it was about 2002, 2003, I got an approach. I was working out in South Auckland, which is a very, very tough area for policing. It, we often refer to it as New Zealand's Bronx. It's not, but there's some tough people and tough times in there. But they wanted to get a girls' rugby team started, and it was when our Black Ferns were amazing. They still are amazing girls. I know half of them, so I've got to be careful here because otherwise they'll start saying things about me. So, but I knew a lot of the Black Ferns then who were winning Rugby World Cups and the such like. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. I played rugby at high school and I played rugby at club level. So we started training these girls. We didn't have enough girls to start off with. And then eventually we got really, really good and we went to the equivalent to your sort of provincial finals. And then I stopped. It was taking too much time up and, we had a son and everything else, but I stopped. And then about 2-3 years ago, I approached our local high school here, which is about 400 metres away from where I'm sitting, and said, do you have a girls rugby team? I think girl rugby players are a lot easier to coach. No disrespect, Bryan, but what we call here the wahine tai, the warrior women, are a lot easier to educate. There's no ego, there's no BS. They don't know stuff better than you. And I'm not saying that they don't, because some of them do, but even if they don't, they'll still listen. And there's an amazing team vibe. So I got hold of my old high school, which is probably about half an hour down the road, and said, hey, could I come and help you coach? And they went, yeah, sure, no worries. So I'm very lucky. I have a gentleman who coaches our backs, who played close to 50 games for the Italian rugby team. I managed to twist my mate's arm, who is an ex-Black Fern. She's won the Rugby World Cup 3 times, and she's also like sort of our fire chief for our big sort of provincial area here as well. And then there's myself. Like I said, I'm the dirty old loon who turns up the slap shot, one of the Hanson brothers. It's just sort of that type of thing. And it's a great synergy there. So we have, how many girls do we have? About 21 girls in our squad. They're going to be playing in sort of the provincial finals next Monday. But our whole goal, and I know it sounds cheesy, but like I said to the girls, look, my whole goal here is I'm not interested in trophies. I'm not interested in championships. What I want to do, just like Ted Lasso, was to make sure that at the end of the season you walk away a better human. And I think we're doing that. There's some amazing girls in that team. I'm sure that they'll go on to be some amazing ladies there as they get older. And that's the thing that I love the most, is actually watching them grow up, going from like 17 and everything else, and maybe having a chat to them in those sort of years where they're not my players anymore, but they'll still come back and have a chat and say, can I get some advice from this? And, oh my gosh, you sound like my dad. And I'm like, well, that's because your dad's a smart person, that type of stuff. But it's really is, it's a lifelong connection. And like even now, I'll see some of the girls that I used to coach in the early 2000s, and they're mums and they've got 2 or 3 kids, or they're a nurse or something else. And that's all you could ever want. So yeah, that's how I got involved in rugby's coaching. And I've decided to step it up a little bit. Myself and my fire chief buddy, we're actually coaching provincially this season. So we've been selected as provincial coaches. So that's going to be another interesting journey, shall we say.
Yeah.
That's cool. Now, when you started doing Bryan and Bobby, how did you notice the interactions or changes with like the community and kids starting to go, I've seen you before? Did you notice that and stuff? And just what was it like of becoming a little bit of a quasi celebrity?
It was really, really weird. Like I say to most people now when I talk to them, I'm one of the very few and fortunate police officers, I think, because they get to bathe in sunlight. Most of the time, a lot of our people work in the shadows, the people that wear blackened helmets and hide behind shields and that type of stuff. So I get to walk in sunshine. It was very weird. There were some very weird circumstances when we were doing that TV show. I remember I'd arrested a gentleman, and then as I basically released him on bail, he asked me, hey, could I ask you a favor? And I'm like, he said, could you sign some autographs for my kids and have a selfie with me? And I'm like, this is just surreal. I used to go shopping and I'd hear like all these little voices going, that's Constable Bryan, that type of stuff. And even now, like I'll go to high schools and the kids will be like, you're Constable Bryan, aren't you? And I'm like, yes. And they'll sit there and talk to me about Bobby and how we made it work and how we did things and everything else. So that's kind of great. But it's like I say to people, it's not about me being a celebrity, because I'm not. And like I said, we don't have those in New Zealand anyway. But it's that thing of just being a friendly face and people being able to come and talk to you about things. And if the fact that I've spoken to my dog or a dog on TV and that's made you feel better as a kid, then that's a great thing. I'm all good for that. That was the whole purpose of it, was to basically get kids to talk to police officers and realise that just like them, just like their mum and dad, we are exactly the same as them. We, we kind of talk the same language, but we're trying our very best to look after them. So yeah.
It's interesting that you say that, just like their mom and dads were the same thing. Just because we're uniform doesn't mean that we're not human. And that's certainly one of the things that, you've heard me say on different videos and things that I've done, is this idea of humanizing those who serve our communities. Do you think that there's a formula for that?
Yes, there is, but the problem we've got is because of what our job is and what we deal with, we do need to have, as well as having sheepdogs, we do need to have, on the odd occasion, we do need to have our wolves in the pack too. So I'm not going to say that every police officer can do it, but I think those that choose it as a path need to realise that once you're on this path, sure, you can stray from it and go and do other stuff. That's fine, that's your career. But there are some people who will dedicate their entire careers to this, and it's what they're leaving behind that you don't want to destroy. You actually want to keep building on it so that it gets better and better and better, so that when people move into that community policing space, they're actually treated with the respect that they get. I think sometimes a lot of our organisations kind of look down on community policing officers. I don't know what the situation is like in Canada, but over in New Zealand, everybody starts off as a frontline police officer, even the commissioner of police. And I think just sometimes we forget that even though they might have been a community police officer for 10 hours now, 10 years now, once upon a time they were a frontline police officer for 15 years. So they've done the stuff that you've seen. They've been to the places that you've been, and they could probably offer you some good advice or some ways around it. So I think sometimes we forget that. But I mean, look, that's a thing for the recruit instructors to maybe deal with. Because let's be honest, if you're 23, 24 and you're living possibly your life's biggest adventure, you're not really interested in listening too much. So that's just one of those things. I think perhaps it comes with a little bit of wisdom and maturity. Who knows?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find that in police officers and military veterans?
I do.
Maturity.
Yeah. I like to think that we're one of the. Well, I know the New Zealand police are. Some of the people that I police with are some of the most diverse human beings I know. Like some of the people I work with. We've had a guy there who was. He was in a heavy metal band before he joined the police. I've worked with fitness instructors. I've worked with a girl who once transcribed, her job was to transcribe books for visually impaired people. So she used to type the books into Braille. So you could ask her, you'd be talking about a topic and she'd say, oh, that's not what Wayne Gretzky said in his book. He said this, this, and this. And you'd be like, how do you even know that? She's like, oh, I transcribed this book once. I'm like, it's amazing. Yeah, that type of stuff. So there, yeah, be careful because there's some of us around like that. Yeah.
I mean, you know that I love you all. So
I know, yeah. I know, yeah.
I tease, but
yeah.
I'm an accountant, so I get to tease like that.
yeah, you do, yeah.
What path? I'm
sorry, go ahead, Bryan.
What path would you recommend for somebody who wants to get into policing in New Zealand and kind of has that thing of, I want to get more into that community kind of policing like you did, right? Like they had an experience with you or someone else and they're like, I want to be that next voice for that next generation of kids to have somebody to look up to.
Bide your time would be my suggestion. So do what you need to do. We have a saying here, do the mahi, get the rewards. The mahi is the work. So do the work and then look at it as a career. I think some people look at community policing as, easy street. I'm not going to have to work hard. Trust me, I've worked longer hours and worked harder doing the community stuff than I have some of the frontline stuff. The problem, not the problem, but I guess one of the issues with frontline policing is you get to turn up, you get to write the report, you get to do whatever you've got to do. Job's done, I'm off to the next one. In community policing, you get to go to the job, they know your face, they know your name, they know what type of police officer you are, they expect a service, and if you don't deliver on that service, then they're going to be ringing you direct. They're not going to be ringing the switchboard and saying, hey, I just had 2 cops turn up here. So it's that personal touch. So I think that you do need to be aware that there is a little bit of a personal cost as well, because all of a sudden you go from being a faceless organisation to a named individual in an organisation, and people look at you to withhold the sort of the mana, the honour, the integrity of that organisation. So it can be a double-edged sword. It's not an easy street, that's for sure. But in answer to your question, I'd say bide your time, look at where you want to police. And my old supervisor said this thing of get quick runs on the board so that you can show that the community that you are there for them. When I started off in Otahu as the community constable, they'd had 3 or 4 community constables, as we call them here in New Zealand, over about the space of about 8 months. And I was walking up the street just saying hi to everybody, and people were like, yeah, I'd shake your hand, but you're only going to be here for 3 weeks. So I'd look them straight in the eye, shaking their hand and say, I'm here for 5 years and I'll do my best to stay here for 5 years unless my bosses tell me otherwise. In which case, my bosses are going to come down and see you and explain why I'm not here for 5 years. And they're like, oh, okay. So it's kind of a little bit putting where your mouth, where your money is, your money where your mouth is. Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about what, the reason that we were brought together, Bryan, and mental health and specifically for veterans and first responders. You talked a bit in your Stand Up Again podcast about some of the Zen things that you do and other things that you sort of, physical activity, those types of things that you hold really dear in how you handle your mental health and some of the challenges that you've been through in your life. What do you think is really important about physical activity and some of these other things, meditation, breathing, whatever? And, is there a specific formula that you follow, or how do you sort of approach these tools as it relates to your mental health?
So for me, obviously the martial arts side is the meditation and the breathing and the focus and all that type of stuff. So I will very often take some time out, and even my co-workers won't realise I'm doing it, but I'll take a couple of deep breaths and get myself centered and all that type of stuff. But without getting sort of too woo-woo about it, I also like fairly hard, vigorous physical activity. And I like to have lots of interests outside of work so that I'm not always just focused on work. That said, like I've said in many different podcasts, my bucket got full. And I'm supposedly a wellness champion for the police, and, I'm a mental health advocate, and, he's the martial art guy who does the meditation and running and the push-ups and all that type of stuff. It still gets you. But I think it's that thing of, we have a group over here in New Zealand called Farm Strong who do mental health for farmers. And they have a great saying, it's find what works for you and make it work for you. So a great example to that is, I have a friend who's a firefighter. His friends and family leave him alone on a Tuesday afternoon because what he does is he watches a rom-com movie, and literally bawls his eyes out. Just like, he's almost like a fire hydrant coming from his eyes, just crying his eyes out and everything else. That's the way, and he's figured it out. That's what he does. That he pretty much cleanses himself for the week, gets rid of all the emotions and everything else, and then carries on. You know what? I'm looking at it going, that's one of the weirdest, sort of funniest things I've ever heard of. But if it works for you, make it work for you. I know that some people can't do the hard physical exercise. They don't want to do the meditation because it's too woo-woo and all that type of. I fully understand that. But again, it's that thing of, I know that's what works for me. I think probably one of the biggest things that works for me is, I know the people that are in my tribe that will listen, and that's really important. Not talk with me, but they'll listen. So if I go and see them and say, I need a chat, I can have a bit of a debrief with them. I can chat to them about stuff. They can pick me up on my feet, dust me off and say, go forward, trooper. And I'm like, okay, cool. I got my ducks in a row again, and we're good to go. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's interesting that you talk about, this individual sitting on their couch and just letting out basically a good cry on a Tuesday afternoon. You talked quite openly in previous podcasts about, having a really hard workout and then hitting the showers and doing the
Yeah.
same thing, just having a good cry. How
Yeah.
important is it to mental health, resilience, and really just overcoming whatever it is that you're going through to actually allow yourself that release?
Super important. I mean, at that time, and like I've said before, I mean, that was probably the lowest point in my life. I don't think, like, physically, you can hammer yourself, as we all know. You can keep going and going. Even if your thing is, I can't walk around the block 3 times. You walk around the block 3 times and you're like, physically, I'm pooped, I'm done. But emotionally, it probably hasn't done anything. You just basically release some endorphins, your body feels a little bit better, and you're done. So when I was doing my thing, I was doing my physical activity, and then I was coming into the shower, and I was broken about the relationship that I'd lost. And I'd curl up in that shower and just cry my eyes out about, and I'd be thinking about what had happened and what wasn't going to happen and everything else. And it was sort of a bit of a reset, because I knew eventually those tears would end. But like you say, it was a bit of a cleansing thing, a bit of a reset. And then I'd pick myself up, I'd dust myself off, I'd put on my smiley face, and I'd go. And I think that's one of the things that probably we don't do enough with mental health. People say, oh, yeah, I'm okay. And they'll smile and they'll laugh and they'll giggle and everything else. But then something tragic happens and everybody goes, wow, I didn't see that coming. And I think it's because sometimes we don't ask enough. The people that are, like I say to people, there's people that are the shiniest, happy people that they've either had a tragedy in their life. That's why they do what they do. Look at all the all okay ambassadors. Every single one of them has had a tragedy or something happened in their life, and yet they're all amazing people and they all do amazing things. But when you find their backstories, you're like, man, oh man, how did you survive, brother and sister? How did you do what you do now? And they'll tell you their story, but it's just that thing of it's a cleansing, it's a reset, and then I think when you come out of the washer, if you're lucky enough to get out of the washer or the rabbit hole, you actually come out with a lot more sort of sense of purpose than perhaps you did when you first went in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is a key kind of thing, other than like the shower crying, stuff like that? Have you found other people have had kind of benefit with their support and stuff? What kind of initiatives, or even just like a meditation or something, what is something that you've seen other people kind of gravitate towards and you've kind of picked up an interest? Maybe you haven't started it yet, but it's something that you're looking at incorporating into your regime.
Tai Chi. I look at Tai Chi and I'm like, okay. And as I get older, with martial arts, I realize that I can't keep up with a 24 or 25-year-old. And any martial artist who tells you that they can, good luck. They're probably going to sell you a piece of ice as well. But there's a reason why we don't have 55-year-old men competing in the UFC, for instance. But I think as you get older, you begin to realize that it's less about others. It's more about yourself, and actually just training yourself and looking after yourself, and realizing that the conflict you're trying to resolve is actually within yourself. And for me, when I look at Tai Chi, I know lots of people look at it and go, that's a waste of space. It's not really a martial art. Yes, it is a martial art. Yes, it's slowed down quite a bit, probably from what it was initially. But the whole idea of just that sort of stillness and concentrating on your form and your breath and everything else, it's something we do a lot when we do katas, for instance, a martial art. But I look at Tai Chi and I go, you know what, I've done jiu-jitsu. I probably should go back to jiu-jitsu if I'm fair. I'm going back to Aikido next year, that type of thing. But when I look at Tai Chi, I'm like, man, that's so slow. That's going to be a complete mind bend for me. So I'm quite looking forward to that challenge. I've got the odd video that I put on every now and then, and I always get about 5 or 10 minutes through it, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do it yet. And I go do some other stuff. So yeah, we'll get there. It's a work in progress. Yeah.
It's always a work in progress.
Yeah.
Okay, Bryan, before we wrap up, I know you've got to get back to your day and your pup. But I mean, I think, if you could tell the hopefully more than 5 people who watch this,
Yeah.
one thing that they should really be thinking about when they think about how to bridge the gap between, their mental wellness and their personal value and their community, what would that be?
Just that thing again. Don't forget that everybody you meet is somebody's son and daughter, and to treat everybody like you'd expect your own son or daughter to be treated. You know, we all want to do the best for our kids. So I've had this discussion with gang members, senior police officers, politicians, and everything else. You ask them, what's the one thing that matters in their life? And they always say family. And then you drill down on it a bit and they say, my kids. And you sort of say, what would you like for your kids to be? And they always say, happy. They don't, like, you get the odd one who maybe he's invested too much in Bitcoin, who was like, I want them to be wealthy and rich and blah, blah, blah. But most people will say about their kids, I want them to be happy. Isn't that what we all want? So, yeah, so I guess that's the big thing is just don't forget that people are other people's sons and daughters and just to treat them with a bit of respect. And then on the flip side of that, Lisa, and it's something that I've been thinking about for days. I saw that Matt put up a post from Matt from All OK put up a post that said something like, and I'm paraphrasing, don't forget that when somebody comes to see you and says that they've got some problems, especially if it's a veteran or a first responder, that it might have actually taken them years to get to that place. So do the best thing that you can do and listen, not talk, because it's inherent in our nature as first responders or veterans. Yeah, there's the problem. I'm going to fix it. We're going to get it all sorted. We're going to dust ourselves off and we're going to keep moving forward. Excelsior. And that's not the way, So just listen. I had a friend do it to me last year, an old friend from high school, who's a detective senior sergeant here. He came up and told me that he had been walking around his house and looking at beams and everything else. And it was heartbreaking because, there was a kid that I knew from high school who was super confident and everything else. And now his confidence had gone and everything else. And now he's in a great space and everything else. But it's just that thing of, yeah, cool. And saying to him, not I've been there because I haven't been into that rabbit hole, but I'm here for you. I'm listening to you and let's see what we can do to make it better. So I guess, listen, don't forget that people are other people's sons and daughters, and all anybody ever wants for their sons and daughters is for them to be happy.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bryan. This has just been an amazing interview. And Lisa, for everything that you do with keep building this up and stuff and letting me just yap on the show.
It's been awesome, team. Thank you, one, for inviting me. I really appreciate their time. Thank you to your listeners for listening. Please let me know when it comes out so that I can post about it on my social media channels and we can get it listened to down here in New Zealand as well.
Yeah, love that, Bryan. Thanks so much, brother.
All right, you know where I am. If you want to do another one, just give me a yell. All right?
I will. Thank you.
Okay, take it easy. Look after one another.
Bye.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye-bye.